My name is Caro. I am at Serendipity on Farcaster. And thank you. And I run FCNY, which is Farcaster Community New York meetups in New York City. Today I'm on stage because we have a FCNY style giveaway that's happening here at FarCon. And there's a bunch of giveaways that are coming at a part of that. I think that I should keep talking until everybody sits down. So I'm going to go over some of the giveaways and also talk a little bit more about Farcaster New York. And hopefully people will start getting seated as we keep talking. So to begin with, I'm going to go over the list of prizes so that you guys get excited about what we have out here. And let me pull it up right now on my phone. So first, the Beef Chris and Bart Head show is giving away 0.069 ETH. They're a podcast for the middle class. The way to enter into all of these giveaways is to checking through POAP. If you tap that POAP, that'll automatically enter you into the raffle. We're also giving away $100 in trading credit on the Hype app. Hype is an app where you can trade meme coins, and if you win, you'll get access to the Hype app and get $100 in trading credit. Go is giving away $100 credit for the Go marketplace. Go is a peer-to-peer marketplace for physical products, and whoever wins gets $100 that they can spend on that marketplace. Rari Chain is giving away a Nifty display, a square backlit display. They're part of the Rari Foundation, and they embed royalties on the node level to guarantee royalty payments. Warp Shop is $100 of credit across all of their workshops and all the things that they have. Creative Packaged Goods giving away these limited edition reply guide t-shirts, which were designed by Jan Frula. I have 6 right now that I'm going to throw at the crowd. Whoever looks the most excited. Okay, I'll throw one in this direction. I have 4. Keep cheering, keep cheering. Two. And I'm also going to jump down and throw it so that someone in the back can get it. Oh, let me. I was going to jump up, but I forgot I was in a dress. If you haven't checked in, you can check in your phone out. And so we're giving away a bunch of those shirts. And then Lighthouse is giving away 4 $100 Uber gift cards. This is for your convenience as you're traveling to and from places. And those are all the prizes, but they're not all going to be given away now. There's also going to be some given away later and different times. And let me give away some of the shirts. And then please make sure to start sitting down, folks, as we get geared up for the next thing. Oops. Oh, well, as you can see, I'm not very athletic. So I guess, please make sure to start sitting down, everybody. People in the back, please make sure to start sitting down as we get ready for the next thing. Do you want to transition? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. You'll see me back on stage later to announce the giveaway prizes. And I'd like to introduce the next team of folks who are coming. Please come. This is Nowdish Prof and a few other folks. I'll let them introduce themselves.
GM Farcaster. You knew I was going to say that, right? We're off to a bad start. All right, and I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, but this is Taking Big Bets on Farcaster. And everyone you see on the stage is building and putting it all in on Farcaster. So take it away. Introduce yourself, please, and what are you building?
I'm Woj. I'm building Supercast, which is second largest Farcaster client, developed with prosumers in mind, so people who need control over many accounts, scheduling, and any other features that you can imagine creators and brand managers need. Hi everyone. I'm Dennis. I, in the past, was working on a platform called Mirror. We announced some exciting news today that Mirror is joining forces with Paragraph. I don't know if Colin's somewhere in the crowd. Brian O'Meara and Paragraph is the prominent Web3 publishing tools in the ecosystem. My team has just announced this morning some other exciting news that we're building a new Farcaster client called Kiosk. And the goal of Kiosk is to merge social with on-chain. And I'm excited to talk more about that.
Hey everybody, David here, DF. I was a client builder, no longer. We're working.
You just write a cast on whatever you need done and then tag our bot, Bounty Bot, and hopefully someone will work on it. So we're a headless application right now.
Woo! Amazing. And everyone has a bounty they can give away if you're here.
Oh, yeah.
You want to mention that?
There's like seed.
Yeah, we'll get some people.
10 USDC free bounty, and we'd love to see some like creative bounties for in real life stuff. So please just write a cast and tag our Bounty Bot.
Amazing. I wanted to make sure we got that out, Suze. I had a feeling some people didn't know.
Yeah.
So in case you want to make somebody wear a onesie or something along those lines, like Adrian. So we're going to start with this question that came from Ted, actually. So what was the specific moment that you decided you were going to go all in, take a big bet on Farcaster and build what you're building now on Farcaster? We'll start with Wu and just make our way down the line.
So, how early were you to make that decision? I'm very curious.
So my Farcaster story started in 22, but like many, I wasn't very active on the platform since the very beginning. And I was actually building my own, I was busy building my own company. And I had to shut it down in summer 23. And actually there was like one magical moment when I announced it on Twitter. Dan was extremely nice to DM me, saying essentially, hey, I'm sorry, your company had to shut down. These are the ideas that you can build on Farcaster if you're interested. Which was, extremely nice because you want these words of affirmations after you had a loss in your life. So this was the moment when I started being more active on Farcaster, and I obviously was looking for like a new thing to build, new company to start. And summer 23 was like this fun moment when everybody was like both excited about like AI and K99, and I jumped all of these rabbit holes. I decided so that crypto is the most important thing that I can be working on, and Farcaster and like decentralized social media is the most important subset of crypto that I could be working on. So Supercast started in October last year. It's like 6 months of building right now. But the decision was probably like a bit earlier than this.
Dennis?
When did I decide to go all in?
Make a big bet.
The original story is I had the pleasure of knowing Dan Romero for a long time, and to be invited early on to test Farcaster. And I thought it was a very interesting, ambitious idea. But I think, to be honest, thought for a long time, I think decentralized Twitter was a very interesting idea, kind of from an infrastructure perspective. But to me, it never caught my eye. There was a really interesting, moment in history when Twitter was fragmenting into all of these different clients. We had Blue Sky, we had Mastodon. It felt like there was a period of a year where there was a new Twitter clone popping up like almost every week or every month, and I think I've lost track at 13 how many there were. It was quite amazing that the crypto community was kind of creating its own like subreddit in the Twitter modality on Farcaster. It was interesting to follow, but to me it was always like people are doing the same stuff they're doing on Twitter. It's maybe it's a different sub community, but it's the same type of content, it's the same medium. And things really changed. How many of you guys remember Frames Friday?
Vividly.
So
At Mir, something we were really excited about innovating and building on was figuring out how on-chain primitives can be embedded into content into a publishing platform. We played around with a lot of creator economic tools like crowdfunds, editions, splits, etc. And when we saw frames, to our team was a big realization that we were like, we've actually been thinking about frames for 3 years. This idea of commerce, on-chain actions being embedded into social was we thought about it a lot, and it was like, wow, can frames become this new primitive that has the potential to map every smart contract to kind of a UI specification definition that will allow basically embedding all the contracts we love using, Uniswap, NFT mints, I see people wearing a Party DAO's t-shirt, all of these products that we had to interact with by going to all of these different websites, connecting our wallet again. We saw a future where you would be able to interact with these primitives directly in the feed without leaving. And I think we strongly believe that all of crypto, the reason we do things on chain, it's because of what we see on social media, Twitter, on Telegram, on group chats, our friends sharing cool assets, hearing about new projects. And with frames, we were like, wow, there's a future where this is all going to be happening directly in the feed. And we were early in the ideation of some social ideas in Mirror, and we thought Farcaster had many other benefits. Like one, it was a completely open protocol. I knew Dan, I could have called him and asked him about building on Farcaster, but because it's an open protocol, I didn't need to do that. We read the spec, we were able to run the open source software ourselves and build without permission. I think like this is probably a lot of the reason why you guys are here. You guys went out all the way from all over the world to show up here. It's this permissionless nature of this ecosystem, also this community, and like even this conference was organized bottoms up. I think that's really exciting. So we also saw this really powerful catalyst of an early community who was so passionate and excited about participating here. If you want to build a new social product, I'm sure some of you have tried to do that in the past. The cold start problem of trying to convince users to try something new is so hard. And I think what Farcaster gives the developer ecosystem is this early critical mass of users that you can tap into. And we were actually participating. People were actually complaining, why is Warpcast like the only kind of real contender for a client for a really long time? Like it's great to see there's other ones and more emerging. A bunch of teams here that I've had the pleasure to meet building really cool clients. We're also doing that as well. But I think it's really exciting for us to build into this ecosystem, get distribution. And, there's a lot of early adopters that are really excited to try new things. We're really excited about that.
Back to follow. I came across Farcaster in sort of mid 2022, and I'd sort of gotten out of my previous company. And I mean, there were other alternatives that were much bigger at the time. But I think if you looked at how the Farcaster team was making decisions, and you could see these reflected in the app, right? It wasn't all on chain like most other crypto products. It was designed specifically for reaching a mass consumer audience. And they were very mindful of community and UX, which I think we've had a lack of in many years past, and now we're seeing a resurgence. And so in late 2022, I tried to make a Farcaster client. Originally, it was an app where you could see someone else's feed. It wasn't actually possible to make a client. This was like in the reverse engineer the Warpcast API days. And then I eventually was able to make like a web client. So it was like the first third-party client in late 2022. And I don't know. I mean, I got a lot of validation very quickly from people who I respected. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And I thought, being early to networks that can have very strong network effects is an asymmetric bet to make on yourself as a builder. And especially if you're long-term enough, you don't need to see results within 3 months because you're building there for 2-3 years and you can see where it's going. And then, so I was building this client for a while, and we ran into the issues of how do you actually go beyond, Twitter? How do you actually make this novel and better than Web 2 social? And one of the things we came across and experimented with was how do you do mini apps in feeds that sort of work across different clients. And so we pivoted mid last summer to working on a protocol for mini apps starting with Farcaster, and I've been building that ever since. And then Frames came along, and everything went nuts. And yeah, that's sort of my story with Farcaster so far.
Yeah, so I used to work with Dan and Varun at Coinbase, so got onboarded early on, it was kind of just casting to just support them in the beginning because it was like a Twitter clone. Over time, I actually found my behavior changing when channels got added. I was like, this is the first time that I'm actually finding myself using Farcaster instead of Twitter because there's specific topics like food and travel that I really like. And I just loved the community. It was like full of builders and people wanting to experiment. So just that was like my personal behavior change. And then I had previously run a crypto fund called Scalar Capital, and we invested in Farcaster. So then, I was much more incentivized to support them. But really, when I was leaving my fund to transition to go back to building something, I was chatting and exploring ideas with Daniel, and we were really excited by bounties just as a whole because we really love the idea that people can globally just earn crypto really seamlessly for doing work. But one of the big issues is the cold start problem. Like it's so hard, like building a separate platform and just like convincing users to come onto it, create an account and sign up. So that was something that we felt like Farcaster could really enable for us. Why not piggyback off of the hard work that Dan Brun and team had done for years and just kind of bootstrap this social network? But it was permissionless for us to even ask them. So what's really incredible is like we're not building on what like Chris Dixon refers to as like, building on quicksands. Like if we were to do this exactly on Twitter or Reddit or whatever, they changed their API pricing, all of a sudden you're out of business. And it was really powerful to us that we never had to worry about that. And so that's why we decided, but I was trying to convince Daniel to get on Farcaster, and he's a little bit more like harder to impress, I would say sometimes. And so the fact that he joined and he was like, oh wow, I really see what you're saying, like that was another like click for me, because like when you have people like Daniel who are incredible builders and devs, like really resonate with this community, there's really something there.
Love that. And it's you hit on a bunch of points there, and I wanted to swing back to Friend Fridays because you made a great point there. There was a lot of interesting approaches there where you had this thing drop, and then immediately people just started building, creating bounties. How many bounties did you have like that weekend? It was something crazy.
I mean, we had, maybe 200 total, like in terms of also multiple claims, but it was a lot of teams being like, oh, we want people to create frames for us. Like this is the start of an ecosystem.
And then we saw Variant launch a hackathon immediately that Sunday. And you had like basically this incubator that was popping up immediately, like, which we've always thought about. Farcaster has felt like an incubator, but at that moment it really did. And I won't say it, GF, I'm not gonna say the thing. But I'm gonna say this. So, but there's something communal about it. And it goes back to Adrian Senior's talk earlier about, rising tide lifts all boats. So how do you all think about the approach of collaboration and supporting other builders within the ecosystem, similar to like what happened with everything around Friends Friday, but just in general as you kind of go along? And how are you collaborating with other builders? And anyone wants to start with that, go ahead.
Just a quick one. I think there's a really great post by Eugene Wig called what was it? The Status as a Service. Who's read Status as a Service by Eugene Wig? You got to read it if you're building in the Farcaster ecosystem. I think he kind of compares a new social network really takes off if it's able to create a new status game, and kind of the Twitter, maybe it's being funny or having good jokes or being clever, and kind of the TikTok comparison is that the status game of TikTok was maybe a teenage girl could become famous for having funny dance moves, and like if you were like a guy that's funny on Twitter, you just would know where you would succeed in the status game, and completely new creators became popular here. I think Frames was really interesting that it was a new primitive for developers and creators to innovate on completely new terms. So if you could create a clever little widget or game or something in the feed, you could now become famous and popular in the Farcaster ecosystem, and that was another unlock for me.
I'll jump in there. One of the reasons we pivoted out of building a client was because I felt like I was misaligned with Farcaster. So it's much easier to bring in users that are already Farcaster native than get them from outside. And you feel like you're competing with everyone else that's building a client. And so you don't actually want to share necessarily. You don't want to open source. You want to build your sort of proprietary data and your systems. And I think of all the clients, WordCast has an incredible amount of like data and engineering and all these things making it very hard to compete. And mini apps and specifically frames, that was one of the reasons we pivoted into sort of mini apps was that it's a win-win-win where, you know, as a client, you now can like transact and drive daily active users and monetize. As a builder, you can get distribution without building all these other apps. And as a user, now you get a lot more diversified experiences. It's really something that's made much better by crypto. And I think it's one of these core technologies that will actually help Farcaster and similar products win against Twitter. And so I think there is a lot of collaboration, especially in frames. You see, you know, currencies and teams and all sorts of overlaps partner up, and I like that because I want to play like positive sum games. As a client, I felt maybe this is a different experience for you guys, but I felt like it was pulling me in two different directions.
Well, let's go to you to kind of talk about your experience in that area.
Yeah, that's quite a hot take. I wouldn't agree that building a client in any way is, you know, is misaligned with Farcaster, the protocol. Like the more clients we have, the more avenues people have to interact with the protocol, and the more, you know, and you have more ways in which we can onboard people. I'm very excited for Kiosk will do for onboarding more people. Like I'm very excited for what WordCast is doing to onboard more people. And yeah, having more clients is strictly better to me. In general, I am to answer the previous question in terms of like rising all boats. Very often in the ecosystem we have this debate of should we decentralize more, should we make the protocol more robust, or should we let WordCast just like, you know, they take all the market share and like grow as fast as possible. And very often people come to me with like saying, hey, you know, like this thing is happening, this data is on protocol, like, aren't you mad about it? Like this is, you know, hurting your product. But actually, you know, I'm a huge believer in this strategy for next two years to just, you know, have at least one app, maybe now the second. Luke is also building an amazing consumer experience.
Yeah, Nook, I see the Nook founders right there.
Shout out to Luke. Probably started 2 months too late to be on this panel. But they should be here. But yeah, so like the most clients like that we have, and like as long as Farcaster the protocol is growing, I think it's very hard to say about any. It's hard to discuss any potential competition just because the pie is growing so fast. There's definitely doesn't definitely apply to many Farcaster related projects. I would argue even like, you know, again, taking the opposite side of David's take is that
Okay, well, the pie wasn't growing for a long time, so maybe
Yeah, that's
it's a
true.
market condition.
I just started growing.
we're living in different eras. Right now, I would say that like, you know, feed wars, like frames are very dependent on like where do you land on the feed. And then some of them are like heavily financialized, like, you know, the really cool one was Uncuts when you could trade some cards, or now it's like far cards. I'm kind of losing my track here. But for example, you know, there's a very limited liquidity for trading, you know, Farcaster profiles on chain. And I support all of this innovation, but these projects are strictly competing against each other. They will not onboard any other new person who doesn't have existing Farcaster, let's call it cloud. So yeah, it's depending on like what we're building. I think client diversity is strictly good. I heavily believe that. I heavily believe any client that is trying to push for a new experience for new people is also very positive. Any infra company that is entering Farcaster and allows us to build software easier is also great. And like, you know, again, shout out to Neinar, to Piñata.
Neinar, what's up?
What's up, Dana?
The company, the Twitter stack for doing a great job and like, you know, for supporting all of us in this panel. Again, like, you know, none of us could do these things because building on Farcaster right now is quite hard. So yeah, I would agree. For now, as long as the pie is growing, it's like strictly beneficial for any new client, any new experience to be here. And that's quite special about this community.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's said all the time, but we are so early. So we are very incentivized to have new users coming into the Farcaster ecosystem. So even if it's like a direct competitor, like we still view this as like very positive sum. And there's definitely like founders that have been building in a parallel track and very excited to like share ideas and lessons learned to help support each other. I love the founders channel specifically for that. I feel like people are really open to sharing and helping support each other. Specifically for Bountycaster, we love having more clients like that because we can just exist in any client. So it's like a win-win for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, shout out to the founders channel. If you are a founder and you're not in there and contributing and, ask your questions there. You don't need an advisory board. I actually asked that question in the founders channel and realized that at that moment that this is the advisory board and I don't need one. And that's part of the senior Adrian. So we're going to go to Kojo to do some other questions, but I did want to, hold on a second. I just wanted to ask I did want to give a shout out to Rich and Nina again and make sure, because this time last year, there you are. This time last year, it didn't exist.
Rich, stand up, please.
It didn't exist, right? So, I mean, that's pretty incredible because builders couldn't build without you right now. And hubs didn't exist. I mean, we were at FarCon in Boston and none of that existed. So it's amazing to see that in 11 months, how much has changed and also just since January, how much has changed. And just the extensive and the crazy building is what makes this, to me, this ecosystem so excited and why I'm now quitting my day job to go all in on Farcaster. So there you go. And starting GM Farcaster Network. So talk about that later, but come tomorrow and you might hear more about that. So, but now I'm going to turn this over to Kojo.
If I can just say something on behalf of
No,
Rich,
sorry,
because
Kojo, just hold on.
I think it's a story that everybody here will appreciate, and Rich doesn't have the microphone, so hopefully I don't follow anything. But something except about betting bigger on Farcaster, probably deep story of like how Neinar has come to be is more complicated. But from my perspective, literally the situation was that hubs became, Farcaster was possible to be run by hubs, so like the network decentralized from just being operated by WordCast. And I think Dan had this like pause that, this is a good moment to create an alchemy for Farcaster, right? And these guys, they were building something, as far as I know, totally different. And in fact, like, it's something like a week, they had a demo, they had a plan for like rent a hub. And since then, it was, I think, June last year, so getting close to a full year. Like, there is like a full infrastructure of like all the crazy APIs built, and like the whole company is about infrastructure for Farcaster. So yeah, that's quite exceptional, and that's actually betting big on Farcaster, because that was a full pivot of like a company that already raised funds, and not everybody was happy with it, but it turned out very well.
I think it's turned out really well, don't you think? All right, now Kojo, now it's all to you because you've been doing so great with the questions. Here you go.
Thank you very much. One more fake out, and I was going to have to leave the event. Right, we'll stand over here. So some of these topics you guys already covered up on, so I'm going to try not to repeat too much here. Some about competing with Forecast. I think we all understand where we stand there. But what is the hardest lesson that you learned in building on Farcaster? And this is coming from Cassie, and she'd like to hear from each and every one of you.
I have one that comes to mind. So when frames came out, we were like, there's so many cool things we can do with bounties. Like people can pitch in funds and like, they can do all kinds of button clicking. But we ended up with a ton of bots and like, engagement farming type stuff. So we actually had to turn off some of our buttons and only make them available to certain people. So then we limited to like active badges, but then like people were able to get active badges that were spammy. So I think like one of the things that we're still thinking through a lot, and we saw the change was like the power badge filtering of notifications. It's just like finding that line of like, okay, you're a new user, you don't have reputation yet, and being able to use this product versus like, okay, this is a high signal account interacting with the app. So I think that was something we learned through the frames building process.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we were building clients at a time when it was kind of like no one wanted to back clients. Now everyone wants to back clients. And we pivoted to something where we, yeah, tried to contribute a protocol without distribution or product. And then, yeah, we sort of lost to a protocol that had distribution and product. And so I think Dan's sort of advice of product-led protocols and being close to your user and not giving that up is probably one of the learnings, biggest ones.
We're pretty early. It's only been a few months building an ecosystem, but I think the big learning is the power of building on top of a community. Like, how many of you guys have been to DEF CON in the Ethereum space? A lot. I think the beauty of Ethereum, it wasn't just, ETH was a liquid asset, Solidity was kind of had lots of integrations and people, there were tools around it. But I think big benefit of building on top of the Ethereum ecosystem was that there were a lot of Ethereum fans and a very strong community where your crazy idea, people would dismiss it on its own, but if it was contributing something interesting to Ethereum, people would just give it a chance on its kind of like intellectual merit. They would want to try it out to support it as, people that are interested in being early adopters. I think there's very, very similar vibes in the Farcaster ecosystem, but kind of like in a completely different layer of the stack, something more consumer focusing, social, creator friendly, et cetera. And like, we've launched lots of features when building Mirror over the past 3 years, and it's very, very hard to get people's attention, on Twitter, et cetera. And I think this launching today was so incredible for me and my team because we just felt this incredible support. Not just in the feed and, through our announcement, but also people talking to people, getting to meet them, hearing good feedback. It's really powerful. And, I think like the feedback loops you have when you can build so closely with people that, care about you, excited to try your product. It's just a better way to build products.
I really wish I could say that I learned anything. I'm learning many things every day. The hardest one is probably that like building social media clients much harder than I expected. It's but like David already said it, and it's not,
I told you so, man.
yeah, everyone told me so. But also the leverage that you get from like controlling the whole user experience is also incredible. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing this. I would even like encourage more people to try and build their own experiences because there is just so much to earn and such an incredible opportunity. It's just harder than expected, and yeah, I don't have any other public learnings.
Cool. All right, sounds good. So the next question here is what is the pathway for decentralized social to achieve mainstream adoption? And I think this is something that all of us are going to have to deal with to some extent, and we're building. But does the on-chain bit need to be hidden beyond the platform? Or do you think the key is to onboard people to the blockchain first and then have them sort of fall into the decentralized social realm?
Hidden. I think, what Dan said around cozy corners or cozy channels, it's going to have to go beyond crypto, I think, fairly soon to reach meaningful scale. I think the tech community might be the next one that gets interested by Legos on social. I think there's already a lot of tech people in the community that are, nerds sniped by frames. So, but yeah, I think most of the crypto should be abstracted away from the user.
I think in the beginning, it's really great to just like lean into the crypto side, but in order to progress, like you do have to go beyond it. But I think a lot about like just how Tesla has approached it. Like you have the Roadster and it's like, specific to like rich people who with their fast cars. And then over time, you're able to like develop and reach a more mainstream audience with like Model 3 and I guess Cybertruck. I don't know if that's mass appeal, but yeah.
I would have like a bit more delusional take and definitely not as pragmatic as like Dan or David can think about it. For me, building on a Farcaster, like being on a Farcaster, is just such a tricky, better way of interacting with social media protocols. Just because like you can fully trust, you have full certainty that your social gap will survive, that you will not be deplatformed. You can very easily access the API. which is not visible yet. I think mostly because the platform is just not big enough. If Farcaster today had a million daily active users, I think it would be like a totally different story and a much simpler pitch for normal users who would like be able to see that it's strictly better social media experience. It's much more easy to build apps on top of Farcaster. It's much easier to utilize the social graph that you have on Farcaster. And I think we just need more time for it to visualize, but I treat it more like a compounding effect over time that will bring us to like an app that actually has 1 billion users. And I kind of treat it for given. This is like why it's more delusional than pragmatic. But I'm very comfortable with betting on just like Farcaster growing over time for whatever reasons, because people are creative and people know that they can trust the app layer, the protocol layer.
I think decentralized social will not go mainstream by being a decentralized substitute to Web2 social. I think it has to provide a fundamental new experience. And I think to me, I strongly believe that digital assets will upgrade what it means to be online. And I think it's not going to be, it won't be what we think like hyper financialization. I think actually supporting creators, finding meaning, expressing yourself by digital objects you own, on all of these dimensions, it will actually make spending many hours we spend online more meaningful, more fun. We will make deeper connections with the creators we love and want to support. We will find stronger communities to be a part of. And I think the way this is going to succeed is that actually all people will become crypto people, and the rails that will enable interesting experiences, products will be crypto rails with digital assets built into them. And like this will not happen on Twitter. I think like Farcaster has the technical foundation to enable these new experiences that can be built anywhere else. So I think all people will become crypto people, and that we're on track.
Yeah, and I want to add on to my answer. Like something incredible happened during the first talk when Dan was talking, and he asked like how many of people in the audience are actually like building on top of Farcaster, and almost everyone raised their hands. I think like whoever whatever gets us to like actual mainstream scale or whatever we call it, like it's probably like one of the people like sitting here that flew from the other side of the world, and like they have no clout yet, but like they will actually build the experience that we created. And I think recent plans or like recent theory for this is going to be more like happening in like 20 million DAO or something like this. I think was the recent estimate. But it's such a easy bet. Like if we're talking about bets, I think it's such an easy bet to do that it's like one of us with so much passion and so much work put into this success, like something will happen. It's incredible not to bet in this direction. Higher.
Okay, so last question here before we go out to the audience, and I'm going to slightly alter this question from Shah. Do any of you think about Web2 companies and how they might copy successful Farcaster strategies? Like, do you even consider what the impact of that competition might look like?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so in other words, how will Farcaster separate itself from Web2 competitors that will inevitably copy any successful Farcaster strategies once they pan out? Like, do you even consider folks who are building similar things in Web2 who might say, oh shit, I should go do this,
It's impossible to build a protocol like that in Web2.
I don't know. I mean, Instagram Threads is kind of trying to co-opt protocols in some ways. I mean, if you look at like Telegram is technically a protocol that's interoperable, but there's only one client. So that there is already a lot of like strange things where you're like, how will this actually play out? Will it be one client? Like, how do you prevent a Telegram situation? But yeah, I mean, is there an antidote? If there's no antidote, is it worth thinking about? Like, what if someone else copies? I think there will be forks of Farcaster and all sorts of craziness. Especially if it like 100x's, then you see all sorts of strange stuff.
There's been a lot of forks of things just in the past. I mean, you have like Ethereum Classic and all kinds of other stuff, but in the end, like it's often the community that really drives forward why it's winning. So I think that like, yeah, someone could just fork Farcaster right now, but like, not everyone in the, this audience is going to be like building on top of the other one. So I tend to not like focus and think about that too much.
It's funny. Like once a week, there's like a Web2 celebrity that joins Farcaster, and Dan like announces, invites them. Dan has some kind of, there's some kind of like Illuminati group chats Dan is in or something in Web2 with all these founders that join. But what happens every time? Maybe they say hello and then they churn immediately. And I think they think it's cute, but it's kind of like a joke. What's happening in the Farcaster thing at their scale? And I think there's just always this, innovator's dilemma. Like my last crypto company was acquired by a big Web2 company. I think many of you know what it's like to try to innovate like within a big organization like that. And it's this classic like, things with network effects and exponentials. Like before they blow up, they look subscale and not interesting to someone who is already at scale. So I think it's like extremely hard to time. And when they will see Farcaster as an inflection point, like it will be too late because I think it's going to have enough of its own momentum that it will be its own thing.
Oh, that sounds like we're straight. We're going to go to audience questions now. Anyone? No, Cameron.
Hey, all, thanks for speaking. Everyone here is betting on Farcaster in some way. Most of the energy is super positive. I want to ask, what gives you an uh-oh feeling about like a decision like Dan or the team has made or a thing that got rolled to production? We all remember the buttons and the spacing, but bigger picture, like what gives you an uh-oh feeling about the big bet that you and all of us are taking?
I didn't get an uh-oh feeling, but it definitely made me like think a little bit about like our reliance on Warpcast. So there was the power badge like filter notification overnight, and with Bountycaster, like part of the amazing part was anyone without a power badge could respond and earn crypto if they did a good job with their work. So that is something that, like, I'll be honest, like did impact us. And I actually manually start sending people responses because I have, I can see everybody's responses. So I'll be like, oh, hey, this person doesn't have a power badge. I just want to share that this was a good one. So this is where I just want more client diversity. So we're not reliant on this. And I have no doubt that that's going to exist. In the early days, we are a little bit more reliant on it, but long run, I'm not concerned.
I wouldn't say I've had any uh-oh moments for the protocol, even when there was no growth and it was rough, like the sort of first principles that still held up. I think more as a builder who's been trying to contribute, it's like hard to find good avenues to meaningfully contribute when it is Warpcast driving a lot of the innovation in their team, have it unlimited resources compared to everyone else, and so it's just like, how do you actually take it from a Warpcast is innovating and pushing the whole protocol forward, and that's great, but like, how do you actually get it to where teams that are building feed ranking algorithms or spam protection stuff or other things can meaningfully contribute? Because if they can't sell the Warpcast, then the rest of the market share is irrelevant. So we ran into this, and I think one of the things that will really compound Farcaster is when you have many great teams that are extremely skilled, that have been able to, raise capital and sort of dedicate to solve one problem extremely well. And you have all these compounding teams that are essentially each competing to solve all the hard problems. Because there are a lot of hard problems in this space. And I don't think long-term Warpcast is going to be the one to solve it. So that's what it's.
I think it's an unprecedented kind of structure where typically the teams that build protocols are focused only on the protocol layer. Like the Vitalik and the founding Ethereum team were not monetizing applications on top of Ethereum. They were not building DeFi protocols, et cetera. And I think that historically it's been kind of isolation of the team to focusing there. And I think the reason actually Farcaster has succeeded is it broke those rules, and the founding team comes from a strong product from Web2 corporate DNA, and they were able to bring a protocol to market by also building a great client. But I think that it creates all very interesting kind of conflicts of interest and the dissonance, like even I believe on the team, thinking simultaneously that in order to make the protocol valuable, the client needs to be improved. But by improving the client, you're kind of entrenching your client. And I think it was a surprise to everyone, the growth of the Farcaster ecosystem since the beginning of the year. And now I think that problems that were kind of like longer term problems of decentralization now need to be addressed kind of head on earlier, and again, a lot of teams are betting on the protocol, and I think they want more guarantees, more trust. Hearing group chat is coming in 2025 is pretty hard to stomach, strongly betting on the ecosystem and thinking it's a core feature. So I think it's a lot for us to figure out as a community, and maybe put it back in a healthy conversation with Dan, but also with everyone else in the team.
It's hard for me to answer this question because I don't know if any point of time I would make like any better decision looking at challenges that this team is facing. I could complain about warps if we're gonna do something.
Another feature that's centralized.
Yeah, it then also like introduces like weird expectation for like the airdrop from people. It's weird when people try to sign up to Supercast that they need to pay something. I think this is like I don't know how I would solve it, but I think this is by far the worst part of the user experience of Farcaster is that if you don't have warps, you need to pay $1 to sign up to Supercast, and on top of that, then like you see my paywall, and people are extremely confused and they want me to refund it's like $1 connection. I hope this. I think this will be solved though. So I don't really have anything bad to say. I'm not gonna comment on Warpcast because I don't. This is not my avenue. But yeah, I wish for channels to be in protocol. I wish for DMs, but all of these things will come at some point. So
I mean, channels has been around like a year now.
but they still don't work, as good as they could. And a lot of channel moderation is lifted right now very heavily by Automod. So shout out to JPGI. And it could be already, in the client, in the protocol, it will be hard to implement, but it's definitely not in the right stage yet. And I agree with the team on the fact that it's easier to experiment in the client side than in the protocol side.
Awesome. Rob, what do you think? One more
I
question?
think maybe one more. I think we're close, right?
Okay. Last question right here.
Looking at Ted, she's not. You guys, likewise.
Thank you. Drew Austin, Redbeard Ventures. I wanted to actually ask you guys, as an investor, from an investor's perspective, if you guys were putting your investor hats on, I want to support this ecosystem. Shout out quickly, Airstack, who just announced their funding today. We were at their round, but I'm looking for opportunities and ideas and ways that we can continue to further advance this ecosystem. I'd like to know, outside of your own projects that you're working on, what types of original ideas would you be deploying capital and investing in if you were looking to support and accelerate the ecosystem development?
Okay, so I'm gonna plug the last podcast episode that we recorded, doing numbers. We had some VC-backable ideas in the Farcaster ecosystem. I think for me the answer is it's quite unknown what's gonna be a venture scale outcome. I think Farcaster is an extremely good platform to build on for any bootstrap founder. Building a sustainable business is really good on Farcaster. It's hard to see where the value will accrue long term. I think definitely infrastructure.
Everywhere.
Yeah, scale in which Farcaster will grow on 1 billion total users is incomprehensible for any single builder. So that's it's kind of a centralizing force, but then there will be a field for infrastructure players to solve this, and I think these will be very good companies. From one moonshot idea, on the more client-facing side, is an ad network. I really want to build. I really want someone to build an ad network that I can use in Supercast in the future, so I can bring back the free plan. But there's so much data on the protocol that is very easily accessible that you can actually do really, really good ad targeting even today on on the protocol. And the first company that comes to me and says, like, we have a really good ad API that you can plug to Supercast, I'm down to experiment, and hit me up.
Agreed. I think there's a lot of exciting things that will have great value capture for VC case. I mean, I think we're seeing, especially this year, the sort of fact protocol thesis kind of die a little bit, and a lot of like apps are able to monetize extremely well and much better than protocols. A lot of protocols without apps that are like, oh damn, like I think we need apps. So yeah, the app layer. Then anybody who's building distribution through Farcaster, so people building communities, channels. I think there's a lot of podcasts. Yeah, even creator accounts. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities, especially with frames for high conversion distribution. And I think we're going to see channels grow significantly, and some channels grow extremely fast. And I think there's a lot of opportunities with aligning the community with channel growth and quality content growth. And so I think there's a lot of exciting founders building this space now to back.
I would also add to this list any DeFi protocols related to your social identity. For example, borrowing against your Farcaster profile. It's very easy also, like already today, to build some form of slashing. If I don't reply a loan, my profile will be taken away from me. Or, you can build a lot of social awareness that I misbehaved. A lot of ideas that were pitched in 21 now can actually work because we now have reputation at stake that is like easily programmable. So, and this is incredibly unexplored so far. Nobody's building like DeFi on top of Farcaster data, which is a shame.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is also just like as an investor, like you have your portfolio companies that maybe aren't paying attention to Farcaster. So like talking to them about their Farcaster, go-to-market or strategy, how they can better integrate. I've been having a lot of chats with teams that I've worked with in the past. So that's another way to just like grow the ecosystem quickly.
Yeah, I want to just recognize all the teams and also investors betting early. I think when it kind of feels too early to invest. So I know Paradigm on some great open source work. I see Tom over there who built the Frog library that makes building frames a lot easier. Obviously, Frames.js is excellent. But other VC, like somebody already shout out Marion, but there was a Frames hackathon like 2 days after Frames were announced. Companies like Privy added like Farcaster support early. I think before it was kind of a consensus that it makes sense to bet on this ecosystem. And I think it just it gives validation to the technology, but also it makes it easier to build. You know what I mean? And easier to run experiment. And I think like we just need to get people excited, get people experimenting, and something interesting will happen. So any way investors can continue doing that will be very helpful.
And I think that is it. So thank you to our panel. You guys are amazing. Keep building. Woo! And if I'm correct, Ted, we have some lightning talks starting now. And then a final fireside chat up here with Jacek, Will, and Ayanda. So go Bill.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.